All right, why don't we jump to something that people should care about? Sundance. So last year, Sundance was a pretty big indicator of the movies that made an impact. Um, A Ghost Story, which I don't think which we didn't review or neither one of us saw, but that had an early buzz in the year. Call Me by Your Name came out of it, which we did a review on. Check that out, soundcloud.com/nostalgiapod, and on our YouTube page. Big Sick and Mudbound, I believe, all came out.
Correct. Yeah, and Get Out as well.
Right. Oh, how could I forget that? Probably second biggest movie out of all those. So yeah, tell me about Sundance this year. You were following it pretty closely over the weekend. What came out of it?
Yeah, so I mean, Sundance is it's spread out over 2 weeks or so in Park City, so you kind of gotta just let it happen before you can kind of dive into the the conclusions, the takeaways. But yeah, so it's interesting because on one hand, on a surface level, I mean, me doing my digging, reading the pieces, reading the early reviews, I mean, there are a lot of movies that look interesting, look good, have good casts, and the reviews are really strong. Then on the other hand, it was a really slow Sundance and a kind of, I guess, weak Sundance because most people, most distributors, most people looking to make acquisitions sat it out. Last year Netflix paid $12.5 million for Mudbound. Amazon paid $12 million for The Big Sick. Netflix and Amazon, total. Netflix had 10 acquisitions at a Sundance last year. Amazon had 5. Both of them have 0 acquisitions this year, which is interesting because, I mean, some of the movies, Wildlife, directed it by Paul Dano with Carey Mulligan. Damsel with Robert Pattinson and Mia Wasikowska, the girl from Alice in Wonderland.
Okay.
Sorry to Bother You with Lakeith Stanfield, Tessa Thompson, and Armie Hammer.
Yeah.
Burden with Garrett Hedlund, which is a Ku Klux Klan redemption story. Forrest Whitaker's in there as well. The Tale with Laura Dern, which is about very resonant in terms of Me Too. And then let's see, 2 more. Beirut with John Hamm, written by Tony Gilroy. Really good, really talented group there. Don't Worry, He Won't Get Far on Foot with Jonah Hill and Joaquin Phoenix, directed by Gus Van Sant. And lastly, Assassination Nation. So there is a lot of buzzworthy movies there. And yet, I mean, HBO picked up The Tale, and apparently they're going to market it as a TV movie and campaign for Laura Dern for the Emmys, not released in the theater. So that's interesting. I guess it doesn't really matter at the end of the day.
Get Laura Dern that Emmy, dog.
Yeah. Sorry to Bother You was picked up by Annapurna. And Don't Worry, He Won't Get Far on Foot. Amazon had actually already picked that up pre-Sundance. So, the most expensive movie out of this was Assassination Nation, which was, co-picked up by AGBO, which is a distribution group from the Russo brothers, the guys who direct Civil War and Infinity War for Marvel, as well as Neon, which is kind of a newer player, but they actually are behind I, Tonya this year. So I want to see most of these movies based off the buzz, but it's interesting that Netflix and Amazon, as well as A24, Fox Searchlight, and Focus Features, none of them have bought anything.
What do you make of the slow market this year for the Sundance movies?
Yes. So I really don't have an answer for A24, Fox Searchlight, and Focus Features because they're more traditional distributors. They're just, I mean, obviously we talk about A24 a lot. They're just, they're smaller, of course. But I mean, Amazon, Netflix, I mean, it just seems that, and we talk about how they're in the business of original content, and Netflix in particular likes to own their own content, produce it start to finish. That way they control every aspect of it and thus control every aspect of profiting from it, right? So that's actually kind of extending to movies. Rather than go to Sundance and go buy movies that were already done, they're getting movies started from the start, So everything's just going in-house,
right.
And they're just becoming more self-sufficient, more independent, if you will. And, there are a few movies like Life Itself from Dan Fogelman. Amazon pre-bought that, and then that movie didn't even go to Sundance. So it looks like that's going to happen for the big 2 streamers, or they're just going to, get in from the start. But yeah, it's interesting because you would have thought that Amazon, despite, we talked about last week about them cutting back on indies, they still said they want to be a part of indies. So you thought they could have maybe picked some of these up, for a few $1 million. But, it's interesting. But I think ultimately we'll see if it really matters that much, because I mean, all these movies will get their fair shake, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean they're going to be smaller releases, but I think all these movies will definitely be seen. Out of the ones that you talked about, which ones are you most excited to see, or you feel like could make the biggest buzz this year?
Yeah, so I think the two biggest ones are The Tale with Laura Dern.
Mhm.
That look, I mean, the whole sound of it, the whole premise, that just sounds like it could really take off this year, given the climate we're in. And then Sorry to Bother You is apparently just bonkers. And Keith Stanfield, Tessa Thompson, Armie Hammer, like I said, also has Terry Crews, Stephen Yeun from The Walking Dead, David Cross, and Danny
Shout out
Glover.
David Cross.
Apparently that movie's bonkers. So, you know, I think that'll do really good. Stanfield and Tessa Thompson, they're both, you know, really taking off the past few years. So, yeah, I would put my money on those two.
Well, and Armie Hammer had like a resurgence last year.
Yeah,
you know, that's
no
a buzzworthy cast right now. There were a couple other ones that just in flipping through notes I saw caught my eye. Here Beats Loud has Nick Offerman and Kirstie Clemens. It's like a father-daughter tale. And Kirstie Clemens, I hear, puts on a performance that could poise her to be the next like breakout female star, which is exciting. Also, Hereditary seems like it could be the Get Out of this year.
Yeah.
Oh, is it A24? Did you mention that one already?
No, but the trailer's already out.
Yeah, I think it dropped last weekend. It has Toni Collette, Gabriel Byrne, and Ann Dowd, who's just off of Leftovers, but also she was on the Handmaid's Tale. And it's a horror movie that seems to draw a lot from the 70s horror movies that were very popular, like The Exorcist, but it has its own tone and feel to it, which has made it very buzzworthy. I'm also really excited to see Burden. You know, it won the Sundance Award. Just like their biggest prize that they give out. And Garrett Hedlund, back in the KKK, man, can't get away from it.
Yeah, he's good at playing a Southern boy. So
apparently,
post Mudbound, keep it going, I guess.
Yeah, and just one more that I thought might be a name to keep an eye on. Reynaldo Marcus. He directed a movie at Sundance called Monsters and Men. It's a fictional retelling of the Eric Gardner murder in 2014.
Oh, wow.
And they tell the story from three different perspectives. He made a short film in 2015 that was seen and got him this role as a director. And it seems like he's going to be a director on the rise. So someone to keep an eye on. Any more takeaways from Sundance for you?
No, yeah, like I was saying, I think you just gotta. It seems like it was just kind of a slow year, in terms of things getting picked up, getting bought. Last year seems to have kind of been an outlier with multiple movies being bought for over 12 million. Right. It seems like everything's gonna be mid of millions, which obviously is a very healthy, offer for anyone. And I mean, coming out of these reports that Netflix sat out, apparently there's talk that they're targeting Inarritu. They want to, get him to make a movie for them, which would be really cool. And then there was also a rumor about a week and a half ago that they were in talks with Paramount, I believe, to pick up Cloverfield 3, which was being called God Particle. That title might be changing, but that would be really interesting because that's a movie that was initially going to come out in February. It's now currently slated for April, but we have seen no pictures, no trailers, no nothing. Very much like Solo. A Star Wars story. So that's something to keep an eye on, because also they just announced that Cloverfield 4 is coming out in the fall and has already done filming. It stars one of the guys from Fences, as well as Kurt Russell's son, who was in the Black Mirror episode Playtest. The guy who, the traveler dude who had the thing happen to him. So yeah, the Cloverfield franchise, which is financed by J.J. Abrams' Bad Robot Company, quietly sneaking around there. So keep an eye on that.
Cloverfield was a movie I never thought would even get a sequel, and then when it did, I was pumped. I'd never thought it would become a franchise, so that's pretty exciting. Movie Pass made a little bit of buzz this weekend too, right?
Yeah, they picked up American Animals with The Orchard. So they'll be co-distributors for a cool $3 million. So that's MoviePass's first movie that they'll be financially invested in, and also, of course, could make money from down the line. So that's interesting.
First MoviePass Ventures acquisition.
Indeed.
So we're going to be probably talking about some of these movies, if not most of them, moving forward. Give us your thoughts on Sundance, anything that we missed. Hit us up on Twitter at Nowstalgia Pod, or leave a comment below on YouTube or SoundCloud.